Good afternoon. So it seems the first time for me to see all of you. I think so we have a lot of online lesson. In the past one, it's very painful. So a very painful experience. I think it's very painful to all of you because you only have online lesson. For this module, how about other module? Is it still online? Is it still online? No, it's already face to face. Thank you very much. So starting from which module? Obligation. Starting from module 3. Civil procedure. Legal system and then civil procedure. Okay. Oh, last module. Okay. I think they have changed the order. Sometimes because it depends on the availability of the lecturer and also other administrative consideration. Usually, legal system is the first one. So I'm very honored. So the student always say that I'm the first law teacher to them. So usually, you cannot study civil procedure before legal system. So legal system must be the first module. This one. So I think this is what you look like in the first lesson of legal system. This is what you look like now. Okay. So last semester. So I think usually at the very beginning, students were very enthusiastic. But now when you prepare for the exam, you feel so many things to memorize. In the first lesson, you are asking for, what textbook should I buy? I want to buy many textbooks. So usually at the very beginning, you were very enthusiastic. Now you know that even for this menu, it's quite difficult to memorize so many things. But don't worry, for legal system, it should be the easiest one. So this is a photo about prevention of cheating. Because it's a closed book exam. The photo was taken in Thailand. So in Thailand, they divide the scheme to prevent cheating. Right? Very fine. So we will start the revision now. Okay. So first of all, some logistic matter. First of all, make sure that you have this revision log. You don't have a copy, please get a copy here. Revision log. Haven't got the please pass the copy to the please pass the copy to the I'll try to get a copy of the revision log. It's only the outline for this revision seminar. Usually the seminar is very useful. Many students will feel very confident. Say sitting for the examination after the seminar. Because after the seminar, you will be very confident. So I have to wear the mask. Okay. If there's anything wrong, please let me know. Because usually I don't have to wear the mask. Now I have to wear the mask. I don't know whether the sign is good enough. For the revision log, right? So you also make sure that you have these two revision manual. These two. So the first one is about legal system, civil procedure, business association, basic law. So for obligation, law of obligation, contract law and tort law, we have a separate one. Because obligation, I have to remind you, the most difficult one. Module 3 of laws of obligation, contract law and tort law. It should be the most difficult one. Passing rate should be the lowest one. Okay? This one, legal system, passing rate is very high. And also our problem is that we cannot give too many distinctions. Because usually the student performance in this module is the best one. Legal system. One of the reasons is taught by me. Okay? Of course, it's not the major reason. The major reason is that the questions are more or less the same. Okay? Just like the advantage of doctrine of precedent. Can you recall one of the advantage of the doctrine of precedent, stare decisis. What are the advantage? 先例制度有咩好處啊 ？Predictability. Okay, predictable. Law is predictable. The question of legal system is also predictable. Consistent. So later on, when you look at the past paper, you know what I mean. The question are more or less the same. Okay, every year is very consistent, very predictable. Okay, so if you do not perform well in this model, it's your fault. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. Blame yourself. Okay. So the questions are quite easy, very easy. Okay. Just memorize the answer. You can find all the answer in my PowerPoint. Okay. You can find all the answer in the PowerPoint. Whether you can get good mark depends on whether you can memorize the answer, whether you can write down the answer on the answer sheet. Okay? If you fail to do so, of course, you cannot blame me. Okay? When I'm marking, I'm also the marker. I'm also the marker. I will mark your answer script. Okay? So for my marking is just based on your answer. I do not know who you are. I do not know whether you are Joyce or Mary or Vivian. Okay? I don't know your name. So on the answer script, okay? So my marking is based on what you have written down in the answer script. Nothing more. Okay? Whether you are diligent, whether you are hardworking, how many hours you have spent, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. I will never know how many efforts you have paid for preparing for the examination. I just look at your answer on the answer book. Okay? First of all, preparing for examination, you may look to, page 3. But of course, so it is not something too meaningful. How to study law and pass the exam. So I think this one is for all the modules. It's not only for, module 1. It's for all the modules. Maybe it's also true for, your study in the future. Okay? I think some keys are memorization. Please note that in some module, memorization is not enough. For example, in laws of obligation, why laws of obligation is so difficult? Why? Why so many people fail in contract law? I recall also when I was in the university, very brilliant students, they got all distinction in the A level, they still fail in contract law. Don't know why. They can memorize so many things, but they cannot provide the answer. Why? Because your contract law is substantive law. You have to spot the issue. You have to apply the law. You have to explain the legal principle. You cannot just memorize. Even though you can memorize everything, you cannot give a good answer. Because you have to apply the law to the fact. How about legal system? Do you have to spot the issue? No need. Because there won't be any case study. There won't be any problem type question. The most difficult question. Problem type question is the most difficult one. So when you study law, problem type question is the most difficult one. Why? Because there are so many different situations. So many. Okay? Even though you know all the law about tenancy, you will come across many situations you will have never come across. Okay? Because the situation, there are so many different situations. Okay? You know all the principles, you know all the legislation, but you cannot make a judgment. You cannot determine whether the contract is valid or not. You cannot determine whether the performance is good or not. Right? So your answer may be wrong. If you are a lawyer, if you give wrong answer, what is the consequence? You will be sued. You will be liable. You will be liable for negligent misstatement. Okay? It's professional negligence. 專業疏忽 okay? Just like a doctor. If you do something wrong, you may be sued by the patient. So lawyer is also sued by the client. Okay? But legal system, you are very lucky. Why? Because we don't have any problem type question. The only exception is legal aid. Legal aid is the only exception. But legal aid is quite simple. Because for legal aid, you only look at 2 points. Means test and merit test. These are the 2 criteria you have to pay attention. So it's quite easy. Okay? So apart from legal aid, nearly all the chapter, there won't be any problem type question. Because for problem type question, you have to spot the issue. You have to explain the law. You have to apply the law to the fact. You have to determine. From time to time, my student always ask me a question. Is this statement a statement of fact or statement of opinion? Is it reasonable? So whether reasonable time has left. I tell them, you have to answer the question by yourself. Okay? Don't expect me to give you the answer. Okay? When you are doing the assignment, you have to spot the issue. You have to do so many things. You have to make your own determination. You have to determine whether there's a breach or not. Whether the term is an express term or implied term. You have to do it by yourself. Okay? So it's a difficulty. Even though you know the definition of express term, you know the definition of implied term, but you have to decide whether the term is an express term or implied term. Do you think it's an easy job? Very difficult. Very difficult. Even though you know all the law. Okay? But this is what your client is looking for. When your client comes to see you, will your client ask you what is the legal principle for contract law? What are the elements of contract? Will he ask you this kind of silly question? The answer is no. They will never ask you this kind of question. What question they ask? I want to divorce with my wife. Okay? I don't want to give her any money. Please help me. Okay? I signed a contract with my friend last week. I don't want to perform the contract. Please help me. Okay? I signed a tenancy agreement, but I don't like this friend anymore. I want to go to another one. Please help me. It's what they are looking for. They want to have a solution. They want to have a legal advice, a very difficult legal advice. Okay? So you have to use a legal opinion. You have to use a legal knowledge to help your client. So it's the difficulty. But legal system, you are very lucky. There's no problem type question except legal aid. So in the topic of legal aid, I will remind you some possible questions. Okay? Now we go through the but still, even though legal system is simple, you still have to memorize. 記誦, 背誦. Memorization is the most important part for legal study, especially this module. Okay? Especially legal system. Memorization is very important. You cannot write it down on the script. Martin, I have paid a lot of effort, but I can't memorize anything. Okay? If you write down this kind of sentence, I will give you 1 mark. Okay? I will give you 1 mark. So I will not give you 0 mark. I will still give you 1 mark. But of course, you cannot pass the exam. You say, oh, I can't memorize anything. You cannot pass the exam. You have to memorize so many things. The advantage of the doctrine of precedent, how it operates, what's meant by vertical stare decisis, what's meant by horizontal stare decisis. Okay? You have to explain so many things. Otherwise, you cannot get good marks. So it's very important. Memorization. Make sure that you can memorize the key term. Study skill. So case name. Legal system. So it's not too important. Can you name the chapter? You have to memorize cases. Which chapter you have to memorize cases? Which chapter? Altogether, we have 10 chapters. Which chapter you have to memorize cases? Several. The biggest one should be chapter 7, interpretation of legislation. We have different approach of interpreting the legislation, literal approach, etc. You have to memorize cases. This one is especially important. It's also the reason some students, they don't like to answer question on chapter 7 because they think citing a case is difficult. You have to memorize many cases for chapter 7. Other than that, other than chapter 7 and chapter 5, basically you don't have to memorize any cases. Something is very common sense. For example, on the topic of Jewish, the advantage of Jewish system, eligibility, reform, criticism is very common sense. Right? You don't have to memorize very difficult. So it's quite difficult for you to memorize the formula because it's something very common sense. Right? You can just use your common sense. Right? So in answering the question. Right? So case name is only for chapter 5 and chapter 6, chapter 7. Also, revision class, okay, so it's important. And say for preparation, I think you have to form a study group. I think most advisable. Please form a study group with your classmates. Very important. So if you are only, if you prepare the exam alone, so if you are alone, you will feel very lonely. Okay. Sometimes you feel very helpless. So try to form a group. 3 to 4 persons is already enough. So you can help each other. You can remind each other. I think it's for problem type question. I think it's not something so important to us. Then, so we just go through it and say that. And now we go to the most important part. For students, when you prepare for the exam, so I think the past paper should be the most important one. Past paper. First of all, we'll go through the past paper. And so it's something we have mentioned before. Altogether, we have 10 chapters for legal system. But you can see that some chapters you don't have to consider. So you can exclude some chapter. Which chapter? Chapter 1, chapter 2, and also chapter 4. You can simply ignore them. Chapter 1, introduction. Chapter 2, classification. Chapter 4, finding the law. There are some fundamental concepts, but there won't be any question directly on these 3 chapters. Okay? So 10 chapter minus 3. What's the answer? 7. You only have to study 7 chapters. How many questions are in the examination? What's the format of the examination? Also 7 questions. Also 7 questions. Okay? So in the exam, so I think it's more or less the same for all the modules. You can go to format of the examination question. Session A, 3 out of 5. Session B, 1 out of 2. So what's the total number? The same, 7 questions. 7 questions, 7 topics. 7 divided by 7. What's the answer? It's 1. Okay, on the average, 1 chapter, there will be 1 question. Of course, theoretically, there may be 7 questions in a chapter. Of course, you will be ridiculous. It's impossible. Even though it's a theoretic possibility, but it will not happen. You cannot expect all the 7 questions are in 1 chapter. It's not possible. Usually very evenly distributed. It means that usually 1 chapter, 1 question. In 1 chapter, 1 question, what is the impact? Do you have to answer all the 7 questions? No, please do not answer all the 7 questions. Okay? Bear in mind, never do so. You only have to answer 3 questions in session A, 1 question in session B, altogether 4 questions. You answer 4 questions in session A, what will happen? Some students will say, I know so many questions. I answer 4 questions. Martin will choose the best fit. He will choose the best fit. For example, question 1, I get 60 marks. Question 2, only 12 marks. So he will choose the best fit. Is it the case? No, I will only mark the first fit. Okay? Even though you get 20 marks in the fourth question. I will not mark the fourth one, so I do not know the mark. I know if I have marked the 3 question, I will not ignore the 4. Okay? I will only mark the first 3. Even though you answer 4 questions or even 5 questions, it's useless. Please never do so. Don't expect I will choose the best 3. It's not the case. Okay? I will only mark the first 3. Okay? In chronological order. Okay? Don't try to answer more than required. Section A, please only answer 3 questions. Don't try to answer 4 or 5. Okay? So you only have to answer. If you only have to answer 4 questions, so do you have to be familiar with all the 7 chapters? Is it necessary? Not so necessary. Why? Because if you know all the 7 questions, you will be in a difficult position. You don't know which one to choose. Just like the case, you are so beautiful. You have 7 boyfriends. You don't know which one to choose. You can only have 1 husband. Okay? You can only choose 1 out of the 7. So the best case is you only one man like you. You have no choice. So you have no headache. You can just choose him to be your husband. So you will have a very happy life. You so many men like you. You don't know how to choose. You know all the 7 questions. The problem is that you have to spend a lot of time to choose which 4 you have to answer. Okay? Also you have spent so much energy in preparing for all the 7 questions. It's unnecessary. Okay? So what's the practical implication? The practical implication is that you can give up some chapter. In practice, it's possible. It's not inadvisable. You focus on 5 chapters or 6 chapters. It's already very safe. Already very safe. Okay? Of course, don't just choose 4. So some students, I just study 4 chapters. It will be too risky. Okay? Too risky. If you only prepare for 4 chapters, it will be very risky. 5 or 6 is quite enough. It means that if you are very busy, if you don't have enough time, you can give up 1 chapter. It doesn't matter. Because we don't require you to answer all the 7 questions. Even though you know nothing about chapter 7, it doesn't matter. As long as you can answer 4 questions well, it's already enough. Okay? We don't need you to answer all the 7 questions. Okay? So just to refresh your memory, chapter 1, introduction. You can ignore. Chapter 3, 2, classification law. Again, you can ignore. Chapter 3, very important. Sources of Hong Kong law, very important. Okay? Chapter 4 can be law. Chapter 5, very important. Case law, doctrine of precedence, direct decisive. Chapter 6, legislation, also important. Okay? Chapter 7, court and tribunal, especially jury. These are very hot question. Okay? ADR, also a hot question. Legal profession. This chapter, what's the problem of chapter 7, chapter 9? The problem of chapter 9, what's the problem of chapter 9? The problem of chapter 9 is that there will be so many possible questions. For other chapters, you cannot see too many questions. Okay, but how about chapter 9? You see chapter 9, admission of lawyer, category of legal work, ways of audience, fusion of the legal profession, professional misconduct, legal so many possible questions. This is the problem of chapter 9. So what does it mean? You want to explore 1 chapter. This is the first choice. Just like your boyfriend. You have 7 boyfriends. Okay? One of them is very ugly. You can ignore him. Okay? So you can simply ignore him. You don't need 7 husbands. Okay? This is the worst one. You can just give him up. Ignore him. Okay? This one, if you don't have enough time, this is the first choice. first try for giving up. If you want to give up one chapter, this one is the first one. Because there are simply so many possible questions. For example, say legislation. Usually we only have two possible questions. This one is not so hot. Passing of legislation is not too hot. How about this one? Is it hot? Very hot. Statutory intelligence, very hot. Right? Really, in all the examination paper, you can find a question on statutory intelligence. Later on, when we go through the past paper, you will know what I mean. Okay? So, from other chapter, you don't have too many possible questions. For example, chapter 3. So, explain the sources of Hong Kong law. You can just explain the basic law legislation, and then you can give a good answer. So, you only have one possible question. But for chapter 9, you have so many possible questions. So, it's not easy for you to guess. So, which question? So, if you have only studied the part on immunity, but the question is on why you're ordered, so you cannot answer the question. You have to memorize so many things. You want to answer a question on chapter 9. Chapter 10 is also not too difficult. So you only need to know the requirement of different legal aid schemes. So we have 3 different legal aid schemes by legal aid department, and also the duty lawyer scheme. For each scheme, what you have to know is the scope of the scheme, what is not included is the exception, and also you have to answer M&M, means and merit test. Later on we'll go through it again. Right? So we have 10 chapters. So you exclude 3 chapters, you only have 7 chapters left behind. If you think chapter 9 is too difficult, you can ignore chapter 9, then you only have to study 6 chapters. Okay? 6 chapters is not too difficult. Right? And I think before to enable you to have confidence, so I think I would like to show you the past paper. So we have 3 past papers. So the first one is page 113. So students who haven't got the revision book, please get a copy. Please get a copy. Please get a copy. Please come here to get a copy. Page 113. Past paper is very important. Not only for this module, but for really all the examination. So you have to do more past paper. The first one is page 111. The first one is 202 of 2020. Sorry, 2018, page 91. This one is the past paper of 2018. So we'll go through the question. So the first one, so section A, question 1, various sources of law in Hong Kong. Of course, you also have to mention the relative importance. You have to, of course, emphasize the basic law. Basic law is supreme. So this is the answer. Here's the answer. This is the question. Here's the answer. Chapter 1, which chapter? Chapter 1. Chapter 3. Question 1 is chapter 3. Question 2, ADL. What's meant by ADL? Advantage over litigation. So these are the 2 points you have to answer. ADL, which chapter? Chapter 8. Okay. Question 3. This one is a very unusual question. Very unusual question. In fact, this question, many students do not know how to answer this question. Many students, I can tell you it's a very unusual question because the question is not set by me. It is set by another lecturer. Okay. So can you guess what's the answer for this question? It's mainly legal aid. So it's mainly legal aid. But this is a very unusual question. You cannot find this question again in all the past papers. This is a very unusual question. Okay? So question 4. Doctrine of Precedent. Chapter. Chapter 5. Okay. So question 5. Jury. Decision of jury. Okay? Important feature. Suggestion for reform, etc. So jury, which chapter? Chapter 7. So question 6. Interpretation of statute. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Okay. Question 7. Fusion of the legal system. Solicitor retainer. Okay. Refusal of retainer is in chapter 9. So what's your observation? Is it evenly distributed? Yes. The answer is yes. The question evenly distributed among all the 7 chapters. Is there any question on chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 4? No. So no, you only have to study 7 chapters. Okay? No need to study chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 4. Very evenly distributed. If you are familiar with all the chapters, the difficulty is that you don't know which one to choose. You know all the questions. Okay? You have 7 boyfriends. You don't know which one to choose. Okay? If you are familiar with all the 7 chapters, you will have difficulty. 選擇困難. Okay? So you have a difficulty to choose. You may spend 1 hour to choose which question you will answer. So it's not good. You can only answer 4 questions. It's the best. You don't have to choose. You only know 4 questions. Okay? You only know 4 questions. So you only know 3 questions in session A, 1 question in session B. You are very lucky. Okay? You don't have to choose. You just answer. You just give your answer. You can get a good mark. And then we go to 2019, page 102. This one is not a very hot one. This one is also in chapter 7, session 8, question 1. Jurisdiction structure of the Hong Kong. So it's one of the possible questions in chapter 7. Chapter 7, we only have 2 possible questions. Court system, jury. Okay? Jury is a very hot one. So you can find this question in nearly all papers. Virtually, I can say all. And I say nearly. I just want to protect myself. Okay? 戴頭盔嘅nearly 嗰字okay? That's no nearly, I can tell you. In all papers, you can find a question on jury. So not nearly. But I have to use the term nearly. Okay? Question 2. Also legal sources of law. Question 3. So it's sources of law, chapter 3. Wide audience, solicitor retainer, chapter 9. ADR, chapter 8. Jury, chapter 7. So if you do not know how to answer question 1, does it really matter? The answer is no. Sometimes you can find a very unusual question, but this doesn't matter. Because you don't have to answer 5 questions. You only have to answer 3 questions. Even though there may be 1 question you don't know, it doesn't matter. Because you are not required to answer 4 questions. You only have to answer 3 questions. Even though you say, oh, I don't know how to answer question 1, but it doesn't matter. Then you can ignore question 1. Okay? If you can answer all the court questions, question 2, okay? Question 4, and also question 5 is already enough. Question B. Doctrine of binding precedent is also a very hard question. Chapter 5. Statutory interpretation. So in all the paper, you can certainly find this question. Okay? So go to the third one, page 113. 2020. This one is a less popular question. Passing of legislation is two possible questions in chapter 6. Chapter 6, the hard question is interpretation of legislation. This one is not so hard. So you won't find this question in all the papers. Maybe every 3 years or 4 years you may find this question. Okay. Some students may not be able to answer this question because it's not a hard question. Doctrine of binding precedent. What's your observation? Can you find this question in all the papers? Yes, the answer is yes. Sources of law. Can you find this question in all the papers? Yes, the answer is yes. Sources of law. Hard question. Okay? All the 3 papers, you can find this question. Okay? Interpretation of legislation. Can you find this question in all the papers? The answer is yes. Okay? ADL is also the same. Out of the 5 questions, 4 are very hard. Okay? Even though you cannot answer question 1, it doesn't matter. Okay? You can choose 3 out of the 4 hard questions. Okay? Also, question 6. Jury. Is it a hard question? Very hard. Okay? Question 7. So, what is your warden? Separation of division of labor between solicitor and barrister. It's not a hard question. Structure and jurisdiction of this one are not so many students who answer this question. Okay? But you can still answer this one. No need to answer all the 2 questions in section B. If you can answer question 6, it's already enough. Right? What's your observation? Which chapter we have the hard question? Usually, how about chapter 3? Is it hard? Yes. Chapter 5? Is it hard? Yes. Chapter 6. Chapter 6, we have 2 possible questions. This one is not so hard. Passing of legislation, not too hard. This one, is it a hard question? Very hard. Court and tribunal. Court system, not so hard. How about jury? Jury, very hard. ADL, is it hard? Very hard. Okay? Legal profession. Usually there's a question, but there are so many possible questions. The point is that there are so many possible questions. Sometimes the question is on immunity. Sometimes the question is on fusion. Sometimes it's on greater audience. Sometimes it's on professional misconduct. Legal aid. Legal aid may not be too hard, but it's not too difficult for you to memorize the law about legal aid. Because all the 4 schemes are very simple. You only have to memorize the scope, the exception, the 2 tests, M and M. So we have the M and M test, means and merit test. Means and merit test is very easy to memorize. Why? Means and merit test, we call it M and M test. Later on, I also will tell you the detail. Okay? So and also another observation for the past paper. So when you compare the question, for example, for question on interpretation of legislation, when you look at the question, what can you find? Even though it's on the same topic, how about the wording of the question? Are they the same? they are not the same. They use different wording. Okay? But they are asking you the same thing. Okay? Don't be confused by the wording. Why the wording are different? Because they have to be different. They cannot be the same. We use the same wording. So it will not be, it's not allowed by the external examiner. The external examiner will criticize us. Why do you use the same question? Right? But we have to ask the same thing. What can we do? We have to use different wording. But we are asking you the same thing. Okay? You can just ignore the wording. In fact, your answer is just the same. Okay? For the question on jury, or the question on statutory interpretation, for all the papers, we are asking you the same thing. You only have to explain the 4 different approaches to statutory interpretation. Literal rule, mystery rule, golden rule, purposive approach. Your answer is just the same, despite the wording, despite the different wording. Okay? So don't be misled by the wording. Don't think that you have to give different answer. So your answer is just the same. And also, sometimes we will give you a statement. I will give you a statement. I do think the statement are very meaningful. In the question, I usually will give you a statement before we ask you the question. I do think the statement is meaningful. 因為佢一句以嚟咁先問你嘅呢啲嘢。Do you think this statement is meaningful? Not so meaningful. That is not so meaningful. I can tell you. The statement may not be too meaningful. Because we are simply asking you the same thing. For example, okay, so this is what you have to do. So after you have gone through the 3 past paper, what's your feeling now? Are you more confident? Very confident. You are very confident. You know you only have to study 7 chapters, and you may even give up 1 chapter. So you can only focus on 6 chapters. So before that, you think that you have to study all the 10 chapters. It's not the case. You only have to study 6 chapters. It's already enough. Right? And now we will go through all the possible questions. Usually you can find the sample Q&A in the revision, revision manual. We may now go to the Q&A. So we will start with you can find so many sample questions in our workbook, revision workbook, right? For question 1, so it should be the first part question, sources of law. Sources of law, okay? So it's the checklist and also guidance law. Of course, you can add a lot of detail. It depends on how many you can memorize. Okay? Your answer is the outline of your answer. It's the outline of answer. Okay, so you have to, of course, so how many marks can you get depends on how many details can you memorize. So for the answer, how long it should be? Do you think your answer, how long it should be? If your answer is only half page, can you get good mark? Okay, so how long is your question? If you use, for example, if you use double line, double spacing, 你隔行咧，咁大約幾多 ？Usually, what's your idea? If you use double spacing, how long should be your answer for section A? What's your idea? Any idea? Half a page. Half a page. Oh, too short, huh? Usually, even for section A question, I would advise you to use double spacing. We all know when you can recall something, you have omitted. So you can add something, okay, at the end of the examination. I use double spacing. It's more preferable. If you use double spacing, usually I will expect your answer will be 2 pages. 2 pages. Your answers will be 2 pages. Another section B, usually the answers will be 3 to 4 pages. I think the biggest problem for many students is that the answer is too short. The answer is too short. This is the biggest problem, especially for section B. Why? Because section B it carries 40 marks. The answer should be double the answer of section A question. But many students, the answer is just the same. It's the difficulty. So if a question only carries 20 marks, or your answer is 2 pages, and a question is 40 marks, the answer is also 2 pages. It's unreasonable. Okay? Your answer must be much longer. If the question is carry 40 marks. So for section B questions, it's very important because it carries 40 marks. Okay? Sometimes for many students, the grading depends on section B question. It makes a very big difference. Some students can get maybe 30 marks. Some students only get 20 marks. So the difference is 10 marks. Do you know the difference of 10 marks? So there are so many grades. Okay? Even though the section A question is just the same. But if a student can get 30 marks in a section B question, another student only get 20 marks in a section B question. The difference is 10 marks. Do you know what it means? It may mean the difference between A and C. So you only get C. If in a section B question, you only get 20 marks. So the first hot question is sources of law. Of course, you have your study manual and also your PowerPoint. You may just follow this one. Okay? So of course, don't be so brief. Your answer, you should not use point form. Point form is only for reference purpose. In your answer, don't use a point form. You may use short paragraph, but don't use point form. It's not a very good presentation. First of all, the main one, supremacy of the basic law. You have to explain the basic law. So also you point out that the basic law is supreme over other legal sources. Of course, we do not include the national security law. So I think I won't expect you to give answer on the national security law because the legal position is not so clear. Sources of law under the BL. We have law previously enforced in Hong Kong, common law, equity, Chinese customary law. Also, you have to mention the national law. National law, 全國憲法律。So it's a bookwork question. Supremacy. So supremacy of the basic law means that the law passed by legislature contributing the basic law will be invalid and of no legal effect. So the guidance note for this question is a little bit brief. You want to have a higher mark. What should you do? You should refer to my PowerPoint for the detail. So don't just give an answer. Don't just know your answer should not be so simple. If your answer is so simple, I think you can only get 12 marks. So if you write down everything in this suggested answer, I think you may only get 12 marks. Okay? So if you want to get a high mark, you have to give me more detail. It should be from the PowerPoint. You may refer to the PowerPoint. So you want to get more detail. So it's the 12 sources of law. Especially, so for the part on basic law, this one is too simple. Please note that is the key one, but it's too simple. You have to add more detail in your answer. Why? Because for a section A question, how many minutes do you have? How many minutes? So usually in the examination, will advise you for a section A. Section B question is 48 minutes. Section A question is 24 minutes. So do you think it's more than enough? If your answer is so simple, you can memorize your answer well. How many minutes do you have to spend to write down all this stuff? Do you need 24 minutes? Do you need 24 minutes to write? You need 24 minutes. Just write down this way. You need 24 minutes. You have to speed up just okay? You have to do more exercise. Okay? You have to do more copybook. You have to practice writing. I don't think you need 24 minutes. Okay? So I will expect your answer will be more detailed. This one is only the skeleton. So you have to add more detail to this suggested answer. Your answer should not be so simple as that. First of all, for example, the basic law, you should not just mention is supreme, you also have to explain the contents of the basic law very briefly. Okay? And also you have to mention that so the sources of law is prescribed by the basic law. Okay, for example, basic law is important. So it's a supreme over legal sources, law enacted, so contravene the basic law. Some legislation have been invalidated. Okay, and also, so this something prescribed by the basic law. Sources of law are in accordance with the basic law. It's stated in the basic law. 我哋嘅法律嘅來源就係 basic law 講明嘅，okay? So it's something stated clearly in the basic law. You have to mention this article. Hong Kong basic law itself, the law previously enforced before, it means the law used by Hong Kong before 1997. And C is the law enacted by the legislature. That's the legislative council. So of course, you don't have to mention this one. So meaning of common law. Okay, I think you can skip this part. Okay? But in your answer, you have to give more detail for the common law and equity. Okay? This one is too big. This one is too big. You have to mention, you have to explain what is the common law, what is meant by equity. Okay? Equity was developed by the equity court, common law was developed by the common law. I think your answer cannot be so simple as that. This one is too simple. So you cannot get very good mark. So your answer is so simple. Customary law. Customary law is very unimportant. I don't know why this paper is so long. Because when compared with other sources, customary law is something quite unimportant. It's seldom used in Hong Kong. Ordinance. So Article 8. Ordinance. So it means the written law. So it's in form of ordinance and also secondary legislation. Usually it's called subsidiary legislation or subordinate legislation. You have to elaborate the term. Okay? Also, you have to mention the Bill of Rights Ordinance. BORO, Bill of Rights Ordinance. You have to mention this one. Usually I will give you 1 mark. So you fail to mention this one, you miss 1 mark. Lesson law. So it must be stated in Article 18. So paragraph 3 and also Annex 3. 基本法附件3. And also you have to give some example. Please give some example for the national law. So can you give any example? Wage or nationality law, okay? National flag, national emblem, or something like that. They are the example of national law used in Hong Kong. Including the national security law is also in Annex 3. That's all for sources of law. I'll try to give more detail. The answers will not be so simple as that. You want to get a high mark. Then the second hot question. The second hot question is judicial person, doctrine of precedent, or stare decisis, or something like that. So it's the guideline for the answer. Judicial precedent, the meaning. So first of all, you have to explain the meaning of doctrine of judicial precedent. So the basic principle is that lower court following the previous decision of the high court. Stare decisis, it only means keeping to what has already been decided. Because in the past, the court have made a lot of decisions. So you want to save your energy. What should you do? You just follow them. Okay? You follow the legal principle in the past. You can save a lot of energy. Okay? You don't need to invent any new legal principle. You can save a lot of energy. And also, the legal position will be very consistent, very predictable. These are the advantages of stare decisis. But before you explain the doctrine of stare decisis, you have to explain two important concepts. The first one is ratio decidendi. Can you still recall what's meant by ratio decidendi? It's the underlying principle of the case. It's called ratio decidendi. Sometimes it's called ratio. It has nothing to do with proportion. 呢個唔係解比例啊，解咩啊？解個法律原則啊，係。It means the underlying legal principle. When you say you follow a case, what does it mean? It means you follow the ratio decidendi of that case. When you follow a CFA case in the year 2006, you are following the ratio decidendi of that case. You are not following the outcome of the case. You are following the ratio decidendi. Okay? So ratio decidendi usually is binding. And also we have another concept called obiter. For the definition, you can refer to the lecture notes. Obiter is also a statement of law, but it's irrelevant to the outcome of a case. 同嗰間 case 就冇直接關係嘅，所以 it's called obiter. Obiter is also legal principle. It's also a statement of law, but it's irrelevant to the outcome of a case. 同嗰間 case 就冇關係嘅。Why we have obiter? The reason is that the judge, usually they are so knowledgeable, they know so many things. Okay? Just like a lecturer, he will mention something irrelevant in the lesson. The judge will also mention something irrelevant in the judgment. But it's useful. It will be of persuasive authority. So we have two different directions. Vertical. What's meant by vertical? Very easy. It means the relationship between the lower court and upper court. 直接呢個垂直vertical. Just like a lift. Okay? You are from the ground floor, you go to the 44. It's vertical. So sometimes you call it vertical transportation. 有啲人講啲電梯係垂直運輸你底層上到頂咁垂直咯So it's called vertical. So it's the direction, it's the vertical one. Okay? It means the relationship between the high court and lower court. So it's very simple. If you are a judge in the lower court, when the lawyer say a case made by the high court, what should you do? You should follow. Just like your boss. If your boss gives you an instruction, what should you do? You have to follow. Okay? You have to follow. If you are a magistrate, when the lawyer say a case of CFA, do you have to follow? The answer is yes. Very simple. You have to follow. Lower court, they are bound by the decision made by the higher court. decision of the higher court is binding on the lower court. It's very simple, just like your company. Okay? If you are junior, you have to follow the senior. You are the senior, your instruction will be binding on the junior. Okay? So it's very simple. The case is the Solicitor and Law Society of Hong Kong. And how about horizontal? Horizontal may be quite difficult. Because for horizontal, we have 3 different levels. Horizontal star rate decider may be more difficult. You have to refer to the lecture notes. For horizontal one, okay? First of all, vertical is very easy. So lower court has to follow high court. High court is binding on lower court. Okay? But for horizontal, okay? For horizontal, it will be more difficult. Why? First of all, so you have to know the situation about the Privy Council and also House of Lords. For Privy Council, the decision, Privy Council case, P1997 case, so it is divided into cases on appeal from Hong Kong or cases on appeal other than from Hong Kong. Because Privy Council here had cases from Hong Kong and other places. For example, sometimes they will hear cases from Australia, from Malaysia, from Singapore. Okay? For those cases, are they binding in Hong Kong? The answer is no. For the appeal was not from Hong Kong, the decision will not be binding on Hong Kong. But for decision on appeal from Hong Kong, it will binding. They were binding on all the court in Hong Kong. Okay? So it's the difference. Of course, for after 1997, so for P1997 decision of Privy Council on appeal from Hong Kong, it continued to be binding. But for decision of the Privy Council and House of Lords decision, no, if they are not from Hong Kong, they won't be binding on Hong Kong. House of Lords is also the same. House of Lords decision, they are not binding on Hong Kong. For other, so we have 3 different levels. Horizontal star rate decision means where the court has to follow its own case. It means, for example, in 1994 CAK and 2014 CAK case, they are from both of them are from Court of Appeal. So the issue in horizontal star rate decision is whether the Court of Appeal have to follow its own case. So it's the issue of horizontal. Horizontal, what does it mean? It means the same level. 中文好奇怪嘅，點解叫咩水平唔係水皮水平即係 the same level 咁解You mean the same level vertical they mean the different level horizontal it mean the same level just like in your company do you think the manager has to follow the instruction of another manager? You are on the same level. Both of them are managerial grade. 大家都係經理級，所以聽人講啦。So you have to know but we don't have a simple answer. Why? Because different level of court have different rules. Okay? We have CFA, CA, and also court below CA. So altogether we have 3 levels. The 3 levels of court, each of them have different rules. So horizontal star rate decisions is more complicated than vertical star rate decision. Because for different levels of court, we have different rules. Don't think that the rules are just the same. They are different. 3個 level 係唔同㗎，大家留意下。Okay? Don't mix up the concept. Starting from CFA. CFA may depart from its own previous decision or P997 Privy Council cases, but it's a power which will be exercised most sparingly. Usually, the law will change after a very long time. Usually, for example, if the CFA case is 3 years ago or 5 years ago, it will be very unlikely for the CFA to depart from its own decision. But if the time is long enough, of course, you know in Hong Kong, we only have a very short history. What's the history of CFA? Only 22 years something. I think it's only 22 years something. So in common law history, It's too short. 20 years is too short. Usually you have to wait for 40 years or 50 years before the court will depart from his own decision. 通常要等幾廿年嘅而家22年太短啦除非政府有不同嘅指令咁樣知老運路所以 the government has different instructions in general CFA will only depart from his decision after a very long time. Okay? It's the law in the common law court system. So for CFA, it will not be bound by its own case. Why? Because CFA is bound by its own case, what will happen? The law will be the same forever. Okay? So it's not possible. 如果 CFA 唔可以改自己嘅法律，咁會發生咩事咁法律永遠都係一樣中世紀都跟住聽住喺度。So of course, we are not using the law in the Middle Age. It's not possible. But usually only the highest court can change the law. In Britain, which court can change the law? Usually it's the House of Lords. You see that the House of Lords may change the law. All the lower court, they are bound by the president. If you are the judge in the district court, can you change the law? It's impossible. 你係低級法庭，可唔可以改變啲法律你唔跟上嗰個即刻捉你啦，係咪？So if you are the district court judge, you cannot change the law. You have to follow the president. You are bound by the president. But if you are the judge in the CFA, what can you do? You can choose not to follow the president. Usually only the judge in the highest court can do so. You have to wait until you are 15 years old, until you are 16 years old, until you are promoted to the CFA. You want to change the law. 你想改變法律啦，坐到50歲去到上到 CFA 有機會So it's the situation in the CFA. Court appeal. Please look at court appeal. You only have to look at this slide. According to the case solicitor and Law Society of Hong Kong in 2008, the rule is now that CA may refuse to follow an earlier decision of its own if it is satisfied that the previous decision was plainly wrong. So please note that this principle only applies to CA case. It does not apply to other court. It only applies to CA. 留意呢個就係適用於 CA 嘅 court appeal So this legal principle does not apply to other court. It only applies to CA instead of CFA or CFI. Please note that. Also, you may ignore this case, Young and Bristol Airways. Usually in the examination, you don't have to explain this case. Why? Because it was an old law, Young and Bristol Airways was already outdated. No need to mention this case. Many students still have the misunderstanding. From time to time, they will write down the free exception under this case. This one is already outdated. But usually in the lecture, we will tell you something in the past. I will tell you something which is already outdated. Okay? But in the exam, no need to write down this case. No need. 呢個已經 out 咗㗎啦，呢個。And also you can find the difference. This case was in 1944. How about the new case? 2008. 2008 minus 1994. How many years? 1944. 64 years. So you can expect the next change will be 64 years later. 2072. 2072年啦。大家如果活到2072年可能會有另一個改變So I don't know whether you can survive until whether you are still alive in the year 2072. 51 years later 再51年後，咁你又見到第二次啦。You see so usually you have to wait for a very long time before the law will be changed. These fee exceptions, you can ignore them. Many students cannot understand this fee exception. Court of first instance. What's the legal rule? judge of first instance and also the judge below is not bound to follow the decision of a judge of the equal jurisdiction. 由 CFI 開始咧就點啊？就唔需要跟。No need to follow. If you are judge in the CFI, if a lawyer say a CFI case, do you have to follow? The answer is no. You don't have to follow. Okay? But usually, do you think the judge will follow? Usually they follow. Why? Because they're lazy. Because they're lazy. If you follow the old case, you can save a lot of energy. You don't have to explain why you follow the old case. But if you do not follow, what do you have to do? You have to explain. You have to justify. So which one will you choose? It depends on whether you are lazy or not. If you are very lazy, just follow the old one. Okay? So no, just follow the old one. Being innovative, there won't be any prize. 你創新冇獎做法官唔係好似嗰啲遊戲人哋嗰啲科技公司去創新我哋做法官使乜講no need to be innovative for a judge. Just follow the old case. You can save a lot of energy. If you don't follow, you have to justify. You have to explain. You have to explain why do you follow. What's the reason? You have to write down so many things. If you are very lazy, you just follow the old case. So in practice, even though we don't have to follow, but many judges will tend to follow. Another case is Colchester Estate. You have to. It's at the second case you have to mention. Apart from the case of Solicitor versus Law Society in Hong Kong. It's the second case you have to follow. Right? You have to mention. So you have to explain the concept of racial decidendi. So you have to explain racial decidendi and also obiter. Racial decidendi, what does it mean? Is the proposition of law underlying legal principle, which form the authoritative element in any judicial decision. The key word is underlying principle or case, reason for the decision. Okay? So when you are reading a case, the outcome is, we always say that the outcome is important to the party. Okay? For example, when someone is prosecuted, whether he's found guilty or not is very important to him. But how about lawyer? Are you concerned whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty? The answer is no. You're more concerned with the legal principle. Why you are so concerned with the legal principle? Because the legal principle can be used in the future. Okay? So you have to extract the racial decidendi. You have to extract the legal principle. For the lawyer and law student, legal principle is more important than the outcome. Okay? So whether the defendant is found guilty, how many years of imprisonment he is imposed is not so important. The most important thing is the legal principle. Because the legal principle can be used in the future. When you cite a case, you are citing the legal principle. Okay? So it's the reason why you have to study so many cases. Of course, you don't need to explain how to find the legal principle. You only have to mention the meaning of racial decidendi. Okay? And then you have to mention the concept of obiter. Okay? When you say you follow a case, what does it actually mean? It means that you are following the racial of that case. For example, when I cite a CFA case, when you say you have to follow that case, what does it mean? It only means you have to follow the racial decidendi. Even though the obiter is from a CFA case, you don't have to follow. Because obiter usually is not binding. Obiter 就唔 binding 係 racial 先 binding 啫。So when you follow a CFA case, it only means that you follow the racial decidendi of that CFA case. You don't have to follow the obiter of that CFA case. If the legal principle is only a obiter. You have to distinguish obiter and racial decidendi. Obiter is a statement of law that was not necessary to the decision in the case. Usually it's irrelevant to the case. 同個 case 係冇關嘅，咁冇關點解要講咧？Why it was mentioned in the judgment, even though it was irrelevant. 點解我唔知？Why? What's the reason? Why obiter was mentioned? It was irrelevant to the case. Why it was mentioned? Sometimes the judge wants to show off his knowledge because he's so knowledgeable. Some people, they want to show off his knowledge because he's so knowledgeable. He want to tell you, I'm so knowledgeable, I know so many things. So it's the reason why obiter is mentioned. Some students will ask the question, why the judge mentioned the obiter? It was irrelevant. But it is something quite common in the lecture. The lecturer will mention something irrelevant. So many times. Some people will tell you something so irrelevant. Okay? And also you have to know, sometimes you have to know some concept, overruling, okay? Reversing, or something like that, distinguishing. These are the two hard questions. Later on I will go through other hard questions. So altogether we have around 6 hard questions. Okay? So before we proceed, please take a break for 10 minutes. Please take a break.